Cool. So I'm Jack. I work at Glide. I'll talk about that obviously in a minute, but I just wanted to say thanks for Ollie and you guys for having me. This is actually my first time here at the group. First time in Scotland. We moved my family, my wife and two kids, about sort of 3-4 months ago, and so it's really cool to land. Come very soon to a group that's talking about something that I'm super passionate about. So regardless of how this talk goes, I would love to connect with you afterwards, and if I haven't already, in the pub later or whatever, and see you at future ones. So just as a show of hands, who before this talk had heard about Glide? And keep your hand up if you've used Glide, and keep your hand up if you've used Glide in the last year. Okay, nice, great, okay, cool. So this is what Glide looked like, or the marketing site, and you can see a bit of the product there in 2019, which is when we started. We were in YC, there's 4 founders, I'm the first employee, and this is what it looks like today, at least the marketing site and the messaging, and you can see like a huge difference. And generally, it's great that most of you don't know about it because I can kind of introduce it here, but sometimes there's sort of a need for kind of like a reintroduction to people, because back then it was very much like this: create a mobile app from a Google Sheet in 5 minutes for free, whereas now it's like we're trying to be a platform for designing work software. So this talk really is as quickly as possible. I know it's around 15 minutes or something like that. There's a lot potentially to fit in. I'm super passionate about this stuff, so you'll see a caveat at the bottom there that this is not, I'm doing the thing, this is not a sales pitch. I just wanted to instead give a quick overview of what Glide is, rather than, you'll see a quick demo at the end, but if you're interested, you'll go and find it yourself, the videos. But really, there's a lot to Glide, so I just kind of wanted to talk about how we think about designing software that helps you design software, right? Because I think that's an interesting thing. So I'll try and give you a sense of Glide's mission, because that gives some good context. There's a lot about no code in there as well. An overview of the platform, sort of a really quick one. And then I want to talk about this concept called NoDesign. This is a no-code talk. I know it's a troublesome term, but there's so much more no in no-code, or if you leave that analogy, there's so much to building software, and design is an incredibly important part, so I want to talk about that. So, as I said, I'm going to whiz through this. There's some more resources here. This will be a slide at the end, which I'll leave up. You can snap a picture of it. The main thing is really the university, learn.glideapps.com, which is my thing, along with my colleague Kate. And I'm on X, on LinkedIn as well. And I also have a studio in Leith where I record all of our marketing materials and our educational videos and stuff like that. So if you're in Leith and want to say hi, just give me a shout and you can come by the studio. So part 1, mission, Glide's mission. This is something pretty obvious to people in a no-code space, right? Software is expensive and hard to build. But what's kind of less obvious than that is probably something that's a bit further back from that, which is that most software that should exist doesn't exist yet. And this probably makes sense to a lot of you. And when I say should, I don't mean should as in it would be fun, or it would be great if, or like it would make you loads of money if. I mean that there is just so much, and I don't need to tell you this, there is so much latent need, particularly in businesses, for software. The structuring information, processes. When you start thinking about this, which all of you are, it's mind-boggling how many parts of processes or systems or interactions or just workflows are not built into software. And this is kind of where we're focused. I know no code can be in the kind of the maker space. It can be for lots of different things, but Glide has always been focused on apps for work, even though it's used for other stuff. That has always been our roots. So I just want to talk a little bit about the roots. So the 4 founders, Jason on the left, Mark, David, and Antonio, we're all working at like Microsoft, Xamarin, building developer tools, essentially working with and for and in the space of internal tools for huge businesses like AstraZeneca or Microsoft or any kind of large business that had the money to be able to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on like an employee directory, right? And they found that quite regularly that would end up being a terrible piece of software that would not be used after a year. There's just this repeating pattern of like thousands of dollars being spent on internal tools that were terrible, right? And this is articulated really well by Patrick Collinson, co-founder and CEO of Stripe. And I'll just read the quote. "One of the strange things about the world is how hard it is for organizations to build good software. They can reliably turn capital into nice headquarters, a great fleet of cars, or a nice advertising campaign, but for whatever reason, they can't turn capital into good software." And you'll have heard this term, obviously, clunky software, early Salesforce, other things like that. A lot of internal tools are, I heard some quote the other day, someone was talking about the fact that they have to hire pretty elderly developers or older people who know about ancient programming language just to update this one aspect of the bank's system that won't ever change. Anyway, so we're used to good software. I mean, all people, right? If you have an iPhone, if you have any smartphone, we're used to good software. Even if you work in one of these businesses, so you might be working in a business with clunky software, and then you go outside and you use Uber or whatever you perceive to be good software. We're all used to it. We expect it. Public software is generally good, but it is not the majority of software that gets made, and this kind of speaks for itself. Internal tools are absolutely huge and really make up what software is. But if you don't work in this field, you think, oh yeah, software is the app store, right? But that's like a tiny percent. Another way of thinking about this is in terms of the monetary value. This is in 2021. I have no idea how accurate this is, but I have to assume it's pretty accurate. This is from one of our internal slides. 755 billion spent on enterprise software in 2021 versus 33 billion on consumer apps. I think if you haven't thought about this before, I find that really surprising. So right at the beginning of Glide's development, the founders thought about, like, how do we solve this, right? How do we build software more easily and more efficiently? So that kind of brings me to the platform, like, how did Glide start out? Like with most problems, you start with what's here already. How are people solving these problems in businesses already? And this landed us in a place where it was very thinking about how to design software in a very like data-first way, which is not the traditional way or the common way for no-code tools, which tend to be like more WYSIWYG, like moving stuff around, or at least back in the day they did. And spreadsheets really are one of the most popular programming tools in the world. If you think about it in a loose way, that I've heard a quote somewhere that's very popular internally with us is that spreadsheets are the most popular programming language in the world. Now, whether or not you agree with me, certainly it's how things get done in business, right? If you're someone who is non-technical and you're in a business and you're thinking, I've got this thing, this workflow, this thing, it's amorphous, I'm trying to work it out, like you might write it down, you might write an email, but if you're trying to develop a system, you're going to go to a spreadsheet. You may even not be using like functions or anything like that, but that is how people sort of think already about software. And as opposed to 26 million developers, in 2021, there were 2.6 billion spreadsheet users. So the Glide team thought this was a great place to start. But there's a ton that's more hard about software than just the kind of data component and how you store it as well. And there is lots more than this, but the way that we started was thinking about, well, there's data, there's design, and then there's the logic. So let's build something that's addressing that and letting people deal with that in sort of three ways. So this is Glide. I kind of took a picture of it this morning to sort of give you a sense of where the product is today. I'll try and highlight a few things now, but it's not important that you understand it in any way. I'll do a kind of quick demo at the end. Obviously, you have this live view of Glide in the middle with all the components that this person has added. You have a peek into the data behind it down here, just so you can understand what you're clicking on and where that source is from, pre-built components. And if you've used Figma or many, many tools, obviously this pattern of clicking on the component on the left and then having controls and properties on the right. That's the basics. But if you notice here, we're in the layout editor. Glide has three editors. Data, where you bring in your data, whether it's MySQL, Airtable, Google Sheets, or Glide's native data source. And then you can like sort of build computed columns on top of this. I'll talk about AI in a bit, but this is an AI column running AI and a prompt across every row. It could be millions of rows, it could be just 5, it doesn't really matter. Then you have the layout editor, which has like pre-built components which you can map to that data with just enough design sort of tweakability to make you be able to enjoy doing it and get exactly pretty much what you want, but also it's very on rails so that you don't spend tons of time in there. I'll talk about the design stuff a bit more in a minute. And then there's the action editor, which this is a very simple action here, which allows someone to copy an email to a clipboard, but you can do many other things as well. So I'm just going to pause at this point and just ask, everyone's still with me? Am I moving too fast? Are there any small questions that anyone wants to ask now? We'll do stuff at the end. Cool. I'm sure it's all on. That's great. Fab. So data design and logic, right? But what else is hard about software? Hopefully you get the way that Glide started out. Well, the areas that we're looking at the moment, and in terms of expanding the product, is obviously, surprise, surprise, AI, but also workflows. Presumably you all know about Make and Zapier here, or Zapier. Who says Zapier and who says Zapier? I got told something. Zapier makes you happier, and yeah, okay, cool. Everyone in Glide says Zapier, and I'm always like, no, it's not, it's Zapier. So we find that of the businesses that use Glide, they love it. It's fantastic. They use it for a whole suite of internal tools, but they're still going to Make and Zapier to run overnight workflows or call stuff or bring stuff in or, I don't know, do other things and integrations. We do have integrations, but So we're building workflows, but I just wanted to talk about AI and how AI is like, I was talking to some of you about AI and how it's this, if you're in the tech world, we're just saturated with all of this, like, you want to generate some text here, like, or like, you know, let me check that with you, or like, we're bored with it in a sense. So when the whole AI craze was going on and we were trying to bring it in, we were thinking, how do we bring this in intelligently into the product? And the first was a data approach. You saw there in a previous example, computed columns. This is a very important point in Glide, where you run computations on every row in a table. But AI works in that same way. You see here we have just a regular column represented in gray there, and then you're sort of like analyzing that feedback, getting sentiment. I forget what else is on there. Some other stuff, categorizing it, just basically turning unstructured data into structured data, which for developers makes loads of sense and is actually like incredibly profound in a business context, turning unstructured to structured. This is I do a bit of 3D rendering as well for our marketing videos. This is a video I worked on a while ago when we launched AI, and you can see kind of an indication of roughly what it does. So here's this sort of standard generative stuff you can see is kind of useful. It's like, yeah, nice, neat, okay, you can generate some stuff. But then we get something like text to choice. It's like, choose which category this item should be in, and then watch the UI update on the next screen to categorize stuff into accessories and other things, right? That's just a tiny indication of how powerful it is. Summarize the feedback, add sentiment, and this is all dynamic, of course, rather than you having to go to ChatGPT and ask you to do stuff. So there's a whole sort of suite of small little compact tools that you can chain together in the data editor or chain together in actions and stuff. And then this is a quick look at some of our Figma designs about what's coming up with workflows. So the action editor is very user and event driven. You have to click on something to make it happen. We're just starting to bring in this idea of schedules, webhooks, and other things like that. And we're also expanding what you can do with loops and other things that I haven't actually caught up yet, but nesting and things like that. So to the developers, this will probably make a bit more sense. So that's Glide. I wanted to talk a little bit about NoDesign. We're used to no code. This is a very strong opinion here, but I think that without intervention, software can easily get worse over time. Obviously, you've got bugs, new devices, new integrations, etc. But design trends is absolutely profound. And I'm not talking in trends like fashion trends. I mean, like, design trends is user experience. It's meaning, it's so much more. I can't articulate. I'm not a designer, but this is Instagram in 2012. And just notice you're like, what happens when you look at that? Do you want to use that app? Like, what happened if no one updated that design? Like, and what if your software's like that? What if no one updated it? And it's intangible. It's hard to understand. But this is Glide in 2019, 2021, and 2023. And the person who built this app did absolutely nothing, because everything in Glide is like a managed design system. And that, to someone who's like really interested in design, is kind of a nightmare, right? You don't want to go to a tool that puts you on rails. But what we find is businesses actually don't really care. They want functional, useful software that gets built quickly, that feels good. And actually putting stuff more on rails makes a lot more sense for them. But obviously, if you're a Webflow developer or a Bubble developer and you really want to get into the minutiae and you're a good designer, then those platforms make far more sense. But design is hard. It is so hard, and in some ways, it's harder than engineering, some aspects of engineering. That's an opinion. You can argue with me afterwards. I don't have a strong opinion about it, but it's at least as hard in certain areas. Product design. This is just some of the things that go into product design. You don't need to read it all, but there is a lot, and if you've ever tried it, and it is hard, and it's continually changing as well, right? This is just an indication of some of the elements that went into the way that we were thinking about, like, light and dark themes across Glide apps. You don't have to think about that. This is just some of the components that you get to use that have just enough tweakability for you to be able to get that flexibility, but also that they just work out of the box, they're responsive and things like that. And this idea of no design or design on Rails, I think, is really profound. When I first started thinking about it, when I joined Glide, I was like, this makes total sense. You give people, in a no-code tool, you want absolute control over your data structures, your computations, your automations on the other side, your integrations. That is business process. That is what the software does. But if you're trying to move fast and you're not highly nuanced and experienced with design, it's a real waste of time thinking about design. So in a sense, we think about Glide as a NoDesign tool as well. So I just wanted to kind of give you a quick demo, because I'm probably around the 15-minute mark now, to hopefully bring this all together. So this is obviously not me using it, because actually it's easy for me to talk over something I've already done. But this is in Glide, so you can obviously play around with this live view. And I know it's pretty normal now in no-code tools, but back when Glide started, this was relatively new to be able to like change something and see it at the same time. This, you know, I grew up using WordPress, and you'd be continually, you'd either have 2 tabs or 2 monitors, or you'd be switching, and you'd be like, does it work? And that iterative cycle was just enough annoyance to make it frustrating. Whereas this is like direct, you know. Oh, sorry. I need to press with my mouse if this is going to work. There we go. So yeah, everything's responsive that you add. You can see here I'm clicking on something, and then we have properties on the right. This is all mapping to columns in the data editor that we see here. Some of these are computed, like if then else columns and stuff like that. And you can click on this little thing here, and that'll take you directly to your data. So you can see there's some AI columns there working, some if then else columns up here. And if we click on this description column, and I'm just sticking with the example of AI because it's so hot right now. This prompt is all about like generating a description for an internal part or whatever. But if we do something stupid with this, if I go down the bottom, so look at the descriptions here. You can say be silly, and then it all updates and you get like stupid descriptions. Now that's not a useful tool, but it shows you just how powerful this is. Like imagine this is a SQL database and you had like 1 million rows, right? I haven't actually read these, so I hope there's no rude, stupid stuff in there. Like the workflow power for people, and this would work as well if you import your data, that will compute across everything, whatever your workflows, whatever the chain. Obviously, your usage costs can go up a lot if you do millions of rows, but it's all there for you, and this is powerful for businesses. And of course, all of this is mapped to the UI, like immediately. If we go down to this collection here, this is an example of what I mean by no design. I'm just switching between different layouts. Here we've got a Kanban. I'm changing the data in my table, which could be in SQL, could be in Airtable, Google Sheets, all just by UI. And the power here that I find really exciting and is really the most inspiring thing for me is when I hear, watch, or get on customer calls, and you see these people who are kind of HR managers or operation managers or even IT who could potentially code this, just shipping this to thousands of users and just being so excited with the power that they have and the effect that it has on the data in their business operationally. Here's some conditional branching in the action editor, but you get the idea. I'm just going to let this play a second and just show you the final thing, which is distribution and deploying. If you're a developer, you know that that's an area that's not trivial. If I've deliberately not fast forwarded the video because it's now done and anyone in the world can use it. And I know this is normal with websites, but this is an app. This is an application that's data driven and stuff like that. So that's it. That's my pitch on Glide again. Sorry if it sounded silly. I'm super passionate about it. And I also wanted to just sort of strike some chords, hopefully, so that we can have a good discussion or questions about it afterwards. This is the resources I mentioned. Please reach out. I would love to connect. And as I said, I'm in Edinburgh now. I'm going to come to this group more because it's perfect. I love this stuff. So yeah, thanks very much.
So we've got time for